can't do it. We'll do it live. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Fucking thing sucks.
Hello, hello. Welcome to Open Wide for Some Soccer. My name is Seth Vertelme. Joining me this evening, Pablo Maurer, Thomas Floyd. Guys, let's just jump right into it. We got big news.
I want to talk about Didier Drogba immediately.
Yeah. Let's set the scene here. So you are the Phoenix Rising FC ownership, and your club's most popular, best, most accomplished player is gone from last season, Long Tan. And you need to do something to win back the fan base, which surely has started to turn on you now that they no longer are able to watch Long Tan on a weekly basis. You got to give them something big, right?
Sean Wright Phillips is not enough.
They thought Sean Wright Phillips would be enough.
Omar Bravo is not enough.
Frank Yallop as the head coach, also not enough.
That was a sizzling move, but it didn't work. You go out and you sign Didier Drogba, Champions League winning, World Cup appearing, MLS playoffs appearing.
Brief MLS conqueror.
Doesn't play on turf. I'm excited.
39 years old. Still, let's be honest, he's still good enough to come off the bench for most MLS teams.
I mean, he basically phoned an entire MLS season in and was just dominant, you know? And like I told you, if you like Drogba phoning it in MLS, you'll enjoy him sending a long-distance telegram in USL. I'm excited.
What percentage of the Phoenix Rising trainings do you think Drogba is going to participate in?
I don't know.
Below 25%? Below
sure,
10%?
I think Thomas plans on being at most of them.
Define participate. I could see him just kind of hanging out and then doing finishing drills at the end.
Yeah.
Probably not much that involves actual running.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see him doing much actual running during the games either.
That too.
Yeah, and it makes sense now. Now it's revealed that he's going to be part of their ownership group. Because I just didn't get it. I mean, this is a guy
As
who
they attempt to make the move to MLS.
Yeah, he doesn't need the money. This is a man who's tasted exotic fruits that I don't even know exist. He didn't need a USL paycheck, and it turns out that he's going to try and push towards MLS with Phoenix Rising.
Yeah, and I, for one, am looking forward to Phoenix Rising making their MLS debut in 2020.
With Drogba on top.
With Drogba. With
Frank Lampard, Petr Cech in goal,
John Terry,
Damien Duff.
Guys, as always, we're taking your phone calls 708-LT OWFSS. Got a lot to talk about, right? MLS, DC United, World Cup bid, Wandrell. How do you say his last name?
Lefebvre.
Pointing a gun at the camera. He's got a fan in me. Not a huge fan of guns, but,
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't explicitly threatening our president. Just saying better safe than sorry.
Somewhere the social media policy for most clubs is, don't even not explicitly threaten the president of the United States.
So for those of you who missed it, Wandrele Lefebvre, a backup defender for the Montreal Impact, has been suspended pending further review because he posted and then quickly deleted on his Instagram a picture of him pointing a gun at the camera with the caption in French, "Now that Donald is in power, better safe than sorry."
Yeah, probably not the best move. Anyways.
Pretty hilarious. One problem for Mr. Lefebvre is that he's not really an important player for Montreal, so it's a lot easier to make an example out of a player like that. If Drogba posted a picture like that during the playoff run a couple years ago, they probably would have put it on the front page of their team website.
Remember when Patrick Vieira suspended Mikey Lopez
No.
for It was a Twitter,
I'm basically
Instagram video.
Oh yeah.
I actually
yeah.
do remember this.
Yeah.
Saying
Sadly.
something like pretty tame, just
It
like
was
we're
incredibly
gonna
tame, yeah.
we're gonna beat Seattle this weekend or something. And
Yeah.
Vieira was like, that is not professional behavior, and this is disgusting behavior by these American players. And meanwhile, in Montreal, there's a guy holding a gun to the.
Again, if David Villa would have posted that video, the team would have made that their background on their Twitter account and posted it on the front page of their homepage on the team website.
God, yeah, they'd have been like, look at David Villa's work rate is so high, even off the field. Politically active. Anyways, speaking of David Villa, NYCFC lost to DC United this past weekend.
They did.
Fake news.
In typical NYCFC fashion, it featured a horrific blunder at the back, leading directly to a goal for their opponent. 2-1 win for DC United, their second straight win at home, second straight 2-1 win at home after losing 2 of their first 3. So overall, it was definitely good for a DC United perspective to see them kind of right the ship after that poor start. But, 2 back-to-back 2-1 wins at home, one against the Union, one against New York City FC. Decent results, but are we that stoked about it? How do we feel about this?
I still think this is a team that needs more pieces, and that's something I'm sure we'll see later in this season. There's been talk that maybe we'll start to see the moves that are made specifically with Buzzard Point in mind as early as the summer. Some people are more cynical about that than others. But for now, I think what we've seen the last couple of weeks is that this is a DC United team capable of treading water in the Eastern Conference for a bit, especially if Luciano Acosta is back in the lineup and he's making the types of plays that we saw over the last couple matches. Just his ability to create and run at defenders and win tackles and pounce on loose balls.
I just, after 5 years of covering DC United, I have to laugh at comments like, I think this is really a team capable of treading water in the Eastern Conference.
Well, also,
that's where we're at, capable of treading water in the Eastern Conference.
Also, in MLS, you usually have you win the Supporters' Shield if you win half of your games. And then everyone else is just kind of treading water, hoping they make the playoffs and then get hot at the right time. I mean, this is just the parody of MLS at this point. Treading water is like something that most teams would probably take.
Yeah, Thomas, and you mentioned Luciano Acosta. Doesn't take a very die-hard observer of DC United to realize that he makes a big difference when he's on the field. Missed the first 2 games, came back for part of the third game, and
now is sporting some sort of tiny micro man bun. Did you guys notice this?
It's so hard to see.
I know. It's I feel like you don't do that man bun until you can have some sort of substantial,
I liked.
I feel like you don't do a man bun, period. But sorry, go.
He doesn't do a ton of media availability, but he spoke after the game, and I just found it hilarious that I looked over and my eye line was the same as his. I was like, oh, he's not that short. Oh, nope, he's standing on a platform.
Nice. He gave him some phone books.
Yeah, exactly. He was standing like in his locker on like a foot or 2 off the ground, and it was like, oh, now he knows what it feels like to be a big boy. But
Jesus Christ. Thomas, are you a big boy? Are you a big boy, Thomas?
I am.
Thomas Floyd.
Big boy.
Now, with him making the impact that he does, I'm just going to go for a seamless transition. Is it a sign that, all right, DC United, they'll be okay now that Acosta is healthy? Or is it maybe worrying that one player goes out of the lineup and they are completely inept offensively?
I will say that they are missing another key player in Patrick Mullins right now. We talked a little bit about Ortiz, his replacement. None of us had ever seen him play before this season, and it's still pretty early on, but I think we all kind of agree that what we've seen from him indicates that he's going to be basically a backup level player. Nothing that Mullins should really be too concerned about in terms of taking his starting spot. So, when you're missing Akasa and you're missing Mullins, that takes away like 75% of DC United's goals from the second half of last season. So I do think that if you get Mullins back and if he gets back to that form that he had down the stretch last year, which, it's a big if, but, that is going to make a big difference as well.
With Ortiz, the first match he started, I was a little more encouraged. The work ethic was pretty good, and he scored a goal, albeit a deflected one. This most recent match was more of a, it seemed like he wasn't able to get much going. So I do wonder about his ability to step in, because Patrick Mullins, he's out injured right now, but in general, he's a guy who had one incredible scoring streak, but is still largely unproven on the MLS level. He hasn't shown that he can hit double-digit goals over the course of a full season yet, which I would think he has that ability, but we don't know for sure, and you would think DC would maybe want to have a bit more reliable depth, and if this is all Ortiz is, a backup to Mullins, maybe that's not the greatest situation up top, because you would think they'd want more competition, a guy who could push Mullins and keep him sharp and try to elevate him as a player just through having that competition and training.
Yeah, something I want to talk about. I was been pretty impressed with Bobby Boswell over the past couple of games. I think at the onset of the season, obviously, it was sort of assumed that Steve Birnbaum would partner with John Franklin at center back, that maybe Boswell had lost a step, or just viewed as more of a leader in the locker room and a role player off the bench. It seems to have lit a fire under him, because I can't remember him playing two better games back to back since he came back to DC. I think he's been outstanding, and even Sean Franklin, who after losing his spot to Boswell was relegated to the bench, made a late appearance at right back and looked phenomenal as well. Do you see Franklin coming back into the fold? I think it's pretty clear that Boswell has his hands wrapped around the center back spot for the foreseeable future.
Franklin, I think this might be his role going forward, being a guy they bring off the bench to lock down results when they're in the lead, and it's a tough situation because he didn't really do anything to lose his starting job. He's been very solid over the course of the several years with DC United, and last season was, I believe he had played every minute of the season until he got injured down the stretch in August or September. So he was about as steady as they come, and now suddenly he's in this bench role where he's a backup at pretty much every position across the back line, but being relegated to these minutes off the bench. And I just think DC, they like Nick DeLeon, they always have, and they particularly like him in this experiment at right back, and I see them going forward with that unless there really are issues with DeLeon being exposed on the defensive side.
I think it is interesting what you said, because it's one of those, not to go on a tangent, but you see parallels between sports and real life, and it's like at any job you can be thrust into a role that you're maybe not entirely comfortable with, not do the best job, and end up sort of losing out in general, and I think that's sort of what's happened with Sean, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, and we talked about last episode how long the experiment was going to last, with Franklin and Birnbaum as the center back duo. We compared it to last season when Olsen started DeLeon as a central midfielder, and that experiment lasted pretty much the first half of the season. It went all the way into June before Olsen pulled the plug. This experiment lasted considerably less time, 3 games to be exact, and it makes sense because you're at such an important position where if you make any mistakes, it could result in a goal. But it does still seem a little strange that you would roll out this new center back duo at the beginning of the season and not let them fight through the growing pains that you would inevitably expect them to have.
You know what I mean? I think I think part of it probably is that Bobby is a very strong personality in the locker room. He's a guy who's captain of the team, and he of all people, I'm sure, pushed on and off the field to get a spot back. I mean, as anybody should, who's relegated to the bench. It's not a place where the guy's ever been in his career. So more power to him. Let's see if he can keep it up. And I also think with those initial losses, 2013 is sort of still recent enough for DC United fans, Ben Olsen, several of the guys in the team, that sort of doubt starts to creep in, and I mean something had to change. They had to do something. So
yeah, I think that was it. They had that bye week after the slow start, and it's this opportunity to reboot things in some way. And you look at the lineup, and what change are you going to make? Are you going to maybe bring Lamar Nagel in on the flanks? Well, Nyarko and Sam still seem pretty dangerous. Are you going to make a change in central midfield? Well, they decided to stick with what they had, and had faith that Acosta coming back into the fold was going to be the boost. So that really that left you with the back line. And when you have a player like Bobby Boswell on the bench, and you're so successful with him in the lineup, and suddenly you're not getting results, and it coincides with him being relegated to a substitutes role, then maybe that's the obvious change. And the thing is, he has played well, but I think the most important thing is Birnbaum seems to just play better and be more comfortable and have more confidence with Boswell at his side.
God, I can't wait for Drogba to get here. I'm sorry. Just thinking about it, having some sort of fantasy moment in my head, one of those like Sky Sports, like he's in his luxury car pulling up to the Phoenix Rising training ground, and they're like sticking to I can't wait, man.
They all show up in like their 93 Ford Tauruses.
Yeah, exactly. Like local Phoenix area news guys,
Dude.
First time they've ever been to a soccer match. Did you guys see that fucking goal I put? Oh my God.
It's ridiculous. It was the number one play on SportsCenter.
Wow, you saw it, right?
Here's a question I have. Why do we only see the flip throw at lower levels of soccer?
Especially now, because it's illegal to, used to be able just to defend it by standing there. But now, what did FIFA change the rule a couple years ago?
I'm not sure. I think if you can still defend it by standing there, you'll just get hit in the face.
No, there's while you guys talk about this, I'm going to look it
Okay.
up. But yeah, I agree. Especially, or you see it a lot in like girls soccer in high school.
Yeah.
It seems like it's. I mean, the easy answer.
I mean, if I could do that, I'd be doing it literally at happy hours and shit. So I don't know why people aren't,
Hold on. I'm gonna go on the street for a second.
Hey guys,
Hang on.
check this out. I have like the tightest skill imaginable. I could do a motherfucking cartwheel while I do a throw in.
The question I have isn't. I guess it's not like the players who can do this. Why don't they work their way up and end up in the highest levels? Why don't players just learn this?
Yeah.
Like if I'm Sean Franklin, I want to learn. I'll learn how to do a flip throw.
Can you imagine?
I mean, Rory Delap, who is now retired, I feel like he was a decent player. He played for Stoke City in the Premier League, but I think half of the reason that he played so much was because he had the longest throw in the history of soccer. Mm-hmm. Basically, he could just launch it from midfield into the 6-yard box.
Yeah.
And he just continually played, and I feel like that was part of it. And you're right, Thomas. Like, why doesn't someone learn that? Put that in their bag of tricks.
Okay, so the distance is now 2 meters, which is 6 feet.
Okay.
Which is still pretty close, There's also a great rule here where the defending team is forbidden from erecting, and I quote, a human pyramid.
To block a flip throw?
Yeah, my God. I wonder if that ever actually happened. Jesus Christ.
Oh, my God.
What about
Has it ever occurred to a team to do a human pyramid for a wall?
Yeah.
That's incredible. Wow. Yeah. I wonder if that's even... Although you make it narrower that way.
I think the concern would be...
the normal human is as tall almost as the crossbar.
Well,
I mean, height isn't like we're going to block the one that's going to go way over the...
Well, I mean, some of them go up and
Yeah.
they go over and dip down. I think the real concern would be a team would see that and play it short, and the team is scrambling to get players back on the ground to defend it.
How many players are in this pyramid? I mean,
Rory Delap's actually in the Wikipedia.
Really?
A former schoolboy javelin champion, Delap was renowned for having one of the longest and most powerful throw-ins in football. It's soccer, if you don't know what that means. Anyways,
Yeah, it does seem like a weapon, though, that even teams at the highest level could utilize. Like, if there was somebody who could put a throw-in in the box from midfield on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, not every time, but sometimes, like, end of the game,
Yeah.
need a goal.
Devil's advocate, I guess, if it became more of a thing, teams would figure out how to defend it.
Wait, what
Whereas
was up
right
with that-
now, it's just so rare.
What was up with
teams-
that throw-in for a goal? Do you remember that last year? It was like a women's player, maybe high school, threw it in from 30 yards out, just into the goal. And
I hadn't seen this, but that has to take a deflection to count.
yeah, exactly. It says it's illegal here. Interesting.
There was I'm gonna go way back. There was an old WUSA game involving the Atlanta Beat. I remember I watched, and someone scored directly off a throw-in because it was going in and just wouldn't have counted. And Brianna Scurry dived to try to save it and just got like fingertips to it, and then it counted. What is she doing?
I don't know.
You gotta
Anyways.
know the rules. Should we move on to some general MLS stuff?
No, let's talk more about Drogba.
Okay.
Okay.
No. Let's move on. It's fine.
Okay. So I guess we should start with
Just real quick. I'm sorry. Like, if Didier Drogba thought he could get away with like the leg lock maneuver in MLS, like, what's he even gonna try in USL? Like, literally just a stone cold stunner, like pile driver or something like that. You know, like, I'm sorry, guys. I just cannot wait for this YouTube stream.
I agree. I just can't even imagine the various ways that he phones it in and yet still somehow scores a goal
like
every game.
like a double hat trick every single game. You know, like shattering the USL scoring record.
Should we?
Okay.
I'm going to give you an opportunity to use your new connection here. Lee Nguyen.
Okay. Lee Nguyen played with Jermaine Jones,
Yeah.
whose cousin is Rochester Rhinos midfielder Wallfall.
Wallfall, everybody. Oh, my God. Anyways, moving on. Wallfall.
So
It's pretty good.
So I have to just bring it back to the Wanderlei Lefebvre because Jeff Carlisle just tweeted that the MLS Players Union has filed a grievance over his suspension.
Oh man.
I mean, I think they should. I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, does he legally own the gun? Is it like, you know, I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, it's a free speech issue, I guess. But
Carlisle says apparently the Impact don't have the power to suspend Lefebvre. Only MLS can do that. Suspension is it's a CBA violation.
I'm sure literally a phone call was just made and MLS is like, fine, we'll do it.
Also, that's just, I guess, semantics. Like, you can just, I mean, I guess it comes down to pay, but they could just say, yeah, we're not putting you in the 18, and they can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
They weren't going to do that anyways, so, you know.
So I think this is probably the first time ever in our show's history that we've led off our general MLS talk back-to-back weeks with the Chicago Fire, but here
My
we
God.
are.
Jesus
Because the
Christ.
last time was right when Schweinsteiger had been signed, and now we have 2 games of evidence that he is indeed still a good soccer player.
Did you watch
vindication.
God, did you watch the, I think Ben Jada or somebody did a, I once, by the way, heard David Villa say Ben Jada's name, and it sounded like
Why?
like piñata. It was like this, piñata.
Wait, why did this
Like
happen?
Benyata.
Binyata.
Actually, sorry, I didn't hear him say it. A story was relayed to me by an NYCFC employee.
Okay.
It's a long story.
All right.
All I'm saying is David Villa pronounces Ben Jada's name Benyata. Moving on.
Okay. When we talked about Schweinsteiger last time, it was still in this phase where there was this prevalent narrative that he was an MLS 1.0 DP, aging star, won't be able to keep up, will be overpaid, doesn't fit positionally with the Fire, they have enough D-mids, and you and I think you two, maybe not as passionately as us.
I have to say I probably wasn't as on board the
But-
Schweini train as you guys.
But Pablo and I, at least, we were very optimistic that he would still be an impact player in MLS because he's Bastian Schweinsteiger, and who cares if he was a deep-lying playmaker for Germany? And
I mean, also for
But,
me,
like-
it was about what he had gone through at Man U, and the guy. He's a prideful guy, and like
yeah,
he's not. I think he came here with something to prove.
yeah,
you know?
and he's just a world-class passer of the ball whose skill set happened to be used in a deeper role for world-class teams, but you put him in
through balls, man.
MLS.
Those
and,
through
yeah,
balls, unbelievable. That's why I got on the Ben Jota thing, is because he put together like a highlight video of all his touches in the first game, and it's unbelievable.
Yeah, he's
Like,
just going to pick teams apart.
yeah,
Doesn't
completely.
Thomas.
matter what his role is.
Thomas, put on your Opta hat for a second.
Okay.
Tell us how the Fire.
Put it on.
Put it on. You don't have it on. Okay, there it is. Tell us how the Fire are making this work in the midfield with Schweini, Juninho, and Dax.
Well, we only have one game sample size because Juninho got himself suspended for
Yes,
the second
right.
one. But
Well-
in that first match, it was Dax was the deep-lying playmaker, and then Schweinsteiger and Juninho were in front of him. Schweinsteiger leaning left, Juninho leaning right. And I will say, in that first game, Juninho was sort of minimized. It felt like maybe that'll be the caveat of this formation, is that Juninho isn't really in a role that suits him best because he would be better playing deeper, but with McCarty and Schweinsteiger filling those spaces at times, Juninho is forced into more of this kind of floating wide advanced midfield role. But from Schweinsteiger's perspective, it was perfect for him. Like, he was getting out wide, he was dropping deep, he was getting touches in and around the penalty area, and he's just a player with such a high soccer IQ and ability to pick out passes from wherever he is on the field that it worked perfectly. Hashtag analysis.
Thomas is the only person on the show who can do stuff like this. Sorry, I was literally just reading my Twitter feed while he was talking.
Yeah,
What? That was so good.
Yeah.
Thomas, you can take the Opta hat off now. It's kind of garish. So yes,
anyways.
small sample size, but it looks like the Fire have just made themselves fairly relevant.
Can we talk about Jermaine Jones? I mean, I think we talked briefly in the last episode about his death wish against Matthew Doyle. Since then,
The disappointment of his failure to follow through.
3 p.m. Be there. They always talk about us. We're going to talk about them now. Be there at 3 p.m.
Is that why-
My wife says now 4 p.m. I have to help with the groceries. And then he never showed up.
Is that why he changed his Twitter handle? So Matt could just hide from Jermaine Jones.
Exactly. It's a part of our witness relocation package for Matt Doyle.
Yeah, you know the reason that Instagram Live was called off is because he couldn't successfully kidnap Matt Doyle.
I like to think that both Cameraman brothers, one at the Galaxy, one at the U.S. national team, like joined their PR rings together and formed like a radio force field in front of his transmission.
All right, what were the exact words? Because I missed this.
He literally was in his car driving along, like kind of being a little angry, just being like, you know, everybody's always talking about things. They're talking about me. Well, now we're going to flip it on them and talk about them. And he's like, 3 p.m., be there 3 p.m. sharp.
Okay.
And like,
So
so
he-
obviously just Twitter, soccer Twitter just shuts down.
So he-
literally, I turn post notifications on, all this shit. So then like 10 minutes later, another video is like, okay, guys, I just talked to my wife. I have to help her with some things, so it's going to be 4 p.m. 4 p.m. be there. Like, and then it just never happened.
So he didn't mention Matt Doyle by name, but people
No.
connected the dots.
But well, he
I
had,
mean, he probably wouldn't even have. I just like giving Matt shit. But
He
Doyle
tweeted-
had the piece.
Well, yeah. He quote tweeted an article from the MLS account written by Matt Doyle,
Yeah.
Right.
which called for Jermaine Jones to be benched from the U.S.
so
national team.
fast forward a few days, he goes on a podcast with Hercules Gomez and Max Bredos, and just goes on a rant about the basically haters and how, and I quote, nobody can take my spot. And what he says to back it up is like, I have 20 Champions League appearances.
Right.
Tell me one person who's, and it's like, all right, Jermaine, that was like 7 years ago or something. You know, like,
So I'll start with the caveat that
and by the way, then I watched him in the Galaxy's game on that Friday, and literally,
So good. Well,
anybody could. The first half hour, anybody could have replaced him.
well, yeah.
I mean, I don't know
he
how
turned it on. I think
He turned the simulation on.
Well-
I mean, I don't know who could have sold that quote unquote
Well,
elbow to the face quite as well as him, but
I thought that was a pretty good vintage Jermaine Jones outing. But going back to the podcast interview, I agree with aspects of what he said, because he has arguably been the U.S.'s best player at the last 2 major tournaments and still gets shit on a lot. But that said, he used the same argument that Alvaro Saborio used when he was being phased out by DC United last year, and it was just like, look at the both players said pretty much the same thing, which was, look at the experience I have, look at the number of games I've played at this level, look at everything
how
I've
old
done.
I am.
And yeah, I'm like, all right, like, do you not see how this works? Like, should Pele still be starting for Brazil? He's won 3 World Cups.
no, but I hear he
like,
might be playing for the Phoenix Rising FC next year.
Yeah.
I mean, Jermaine over the years has, like, the word dynamic gets used to describe him a lot. He is a difference maker when he is in game. Like, look at his stint at the Revolution. It's like you could never quite put your finger on why they were better with him, but they were terrible without him, and they were nearly unstoppable with him. And like, that's a tough quality to duplicate in any player in the U.S. player pool. So I understand why he still gets minutes, and I frankly love seeing him play. And I have a huge soft spot for athletes who talk shit or say, "Hey, come take my spot." I mean,
or just athletes who go out in the media and speak honestly.
Yeah, completely. I mean, Lord knows we deal with enough sort of bullet points and boilerplate kind of shit, so I say more power to him.
Yeah, and obviously,
but Jermaine, somebody will take your spot
Yeah,
soon. So,
yeah.
His name's Kellen Acosta.
Yeah, and he's going to have 0 Champions League appearances. I hate to break the news to you.
Well,
Yeah.
he has
but
several
CONCACAF
CONCACAF Champions
League. Yeah.
yeah, of course you want. Yeah, and you want your players to have that kind of attitude.
Completely. Yeah.
So here's a question. I've been thinking for a while that Jermaine Jones will not make it to the World Cup in his starting role, but that he is someone the U.S. could bring as a bench player. Could you see Jermaine Jones accepting that?
Yeah, yes. I think he would come in just like as a fucking destroyer. And
I could see it working on the field, but I could also see Jermaine Jones's attitude not being well suited.
Nobody turns down a World Cup call-up, dude. He's not going to be like, I'm not going to the World Cup because I'm not going to start. I mean, that would be so tight. and like, we need that kind of gossip. So Jermaine, if you're listening, by all means refuse the call up. But
I mean,
but there's no way that happens.
Yeah, 3 years ago we had Landon. We gotta have.
I mean, at Wando, that might happen.
We gotta have some other. Do you guys think that Wando would accept a call up for the World Cup next summer if he wasn't guaranteed a starting spot?
Fuck this, Bruce, you piece of shit. Completely, exactly. You know who I am? I'm Chris fucking Wondolowski. Just kidding. Chris Wondolowski is literally the nicest human alive.
Yeah. also, my favorite Wando, and maybe soccer stat continues.
Wait, hold on, Thomas. Tell a story about Wando in the room alone at the.
Oh man, I've forgotten about this until now. At one of the MLS Cups in LA a few years ago, call.
All right, hold that thought. Wait, there we go. Open wide for some soccer. How can we help you?
Hi. Got a question for Big Boy Thomas Floyd.
Big boy. Big boy's all ears.
Rochester Rhinos.
You got me.
Okay, this is a little off the wall. Article recently written in The Guardian made me think. Dr. Joe Matchnick, can you do it?
To link him?
Link Dr. Joe.
All right. Well, is this cheating? He works at Fox with Stuart Holden.
Use some sort of soccer connection. I mean, I guess you could.
Well, what I honestly have
we need to sit down and actually map out the rules of this game because.
Okay, here, I'll make it really easy for you. He was an assistant coach for the U.S. national team at Italia 90.
Okay, so
you made it no easier for Thomas, who's like 13 years old.
Peter Vermes was on that team.
Oh God, fucking damn it!
And Peter Vermes just coached Christian Valesky, who Sporting KC had signed from the Rochester Rhinos.
God God, with 1 degree. No,
Well,
2 degrees.
I needed a hint. I actually had no knowledge of Dr. Joe's background. He's just
unbelievable, though. I mean, you know,
Good work.
Jesus
Thank you.
Christ. We appreciate the call. I know your name's John McGuire because it's on my caller ID.
All right.
Have a nice night. Yeah. Anyways, tell the Wondolowski story.
So yeah, it was MLS Cup, 2012 or 2011, and it was in LA, and it was I think the day before the game, and we had just done interviews with players, and we were walking around the bowels of StubHub Center, and there's just a room, and we look inside. First off, a PR person comes out and sees we're journalists and is like, "Oh, hey, do you want to interview Chris Wondolowski? He's right here." And we like peek inside the room, and it's just a completely empty room with a table on the chair, and he's just sitting there by himself, just like scrolling through his phone. And he looked miserable. I half expected his ankle to be like chained to the wall or something. Like,
Here's the real question: did any of you accept? Did
No.
you feel like obligated? Like, I guess I'll ask him something about the national team. Like,
I was too caught off guard. I was just like, no,
I'm good.
moving on.
I'm good. You
Yeah.
know,
He was I think fresh off being MVP, and
and still nobody cared.
yeah, he clearly had some sort of PR person who set up interviews but didn't do a good job of getting the word out.
I
So-
love that MLS Insider show. They did an episode on him, and it was like the most boring episode ever. And it was paired with Kyle Beckerman's episode where his model girlfriend is like picking avocados from a fruit tree or from a tree in the backyard. Beckerman's like fly fishing and playing guitar.
The one I contrast is Freddie Montero. Who you remember? Montero was he had his then girlfriend.
They were like, we couldn't speak the same language. Period.
But we still connected, and we're like,
Yeah, yeah. I understand why you connected, Freddie. Anyways, what are we even talking about at this point?
Oh, so my Wanda step.
So
before we
Didier
move-
Drogba.
Before we move on, Chris Wondolowski still has never appeared in a World Cup qualifier.
amazing.
What?
Yeah, never played that World Cup qualifier. He only gets called up for the big
World Cup?
Yeah,
That's when you bring in your big guns.
But no, he also is the only U.S. player to have played in every summer tournament since 2013.
Jesus Christ, man.
0 World Cup qualifier appearances. Not even off the bench.
It's just one way or another, he somehow finds his way onto the summer tournament team.
CONCACAF Champions League, another utter failure by both MLS teams. Do any of us even give a shit at this point?
Meh.
No.
Should we even talk about it? It's just the same tired fucking talking points. And you know what, man? I'm going to make this comparison. This year, fresh after this election, hearing people bitch about, you know, the environment the games are played in or the scheduling just kind of reeks of like bitching about the Electoral College.
I was wondering what connection you were going to make there. I was very intrigued. Like,
No, I just think it's one of those
CCL.
things. It's like we all know the fucking rules at this point. They're not going to change dramatically anytime soon. Like, you know,
Well,
and you know what? Dallas went there
went
for a
down
week,
there,
trained at
yeah.
altitude, and they still got fucking their ass handed to
Well,
them. So,
I remember everyone made such a big deal of the Impact going down to Mexico like 2 weeks before their game, when they actually were able to defeat a Mexican team in a knockout round, CONCACAF Champions League round, and everyone's like, yeah, this is what you got to do. But, I mean, I'm sure that helps, but
they're
you
just
also have to
better.
be better.
They are just better teams. I'm sorry. Anyways.
I actually do have 2 points on this. One, I love how CCL exposes mediocre MLS players who we otherwise kind of trick ourselves into
Like Chris
convincing
Seitz.
are
I'm just
solid.
kidding.
I mean, I wasn't going to mention anyone by name, but
it cost him his job, apparently.
yeah.
So,
And I remember, what was it, a couple years ago? It's always fun to poke fun at Leonardo. I feel like came across as like, yeah, he's become a solid MLS player. They won an MLS Cup with him in the lineup, and then there was a CCL game where he was eaten alive, and it was like, all right, maybe as long as players like Leonardo are perceived as solid MLS players, CCL is not going to happen.
Yeah, I was I was reminded, I was going back to try to find MLS's recent record against Mexican teams in knockout rounds, and I had actually already forgotten about last year when all 4 quarterfinals were Liga MX versus MLS contests, and all 4 were won by the Liga MX teams.
Every time I see matchups like that where, it's like the sense of dread fills me because I'm like, great, here's a perfect chance for it to be extra embarrassing. Like
Yeah.
four teams, not even one of them make the final.
Yeah, and
like-
this goes without saying, but the only measure of success in this tournament is how MLS teams do against Liga MX teams. Like Vancouver and Dallas both got to the semifinals by beating non-Liga MX teams. So it's just like
doesn't
doesn't matter, doesn't count.
The metric I feel like people always use is to get to the final. Because so few American teams have even done that. But it's like they have to win the fucking tournament one time. Like,
Even in your point, RSL made the final without playing a Liga MX team.
Does it, like, honestly, doesn't matter. Like, if MLS team makes the final, I feel like if an MLS team won the tournament next year, but they somehow were able to do so without being a Liga MX team, I'd just be like, so?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, so
Right.
what?
That would almost be bad. Like, that would just be like a bad data point that could be used against MLS.
It would be
You know what I mean?
hilarious if somehow that
Like
happened.
10 years from now, they'll be like, the one time they won, it was against Herediano or something like that. Like, I hope that doesn't happen.
So the other point I wanted to bring up, I saw a lot of people on social media who, in the aftermath of the CCL setback, said, look, MLS needs to have more DPs or raise the cap.
Jesus Christ.
To me, any point where you want to alter MLS roster rules in any sort of substantial way with the aim of succeeding in CCL is incredibly flawed, because at the end of the day, people do not care about CCL, and it is
Agreed.
not worth compromising.
More than one player I've talked to doesn't care about CCL, especially not the group stage games. I mean, it's just like impossible to get those guys to even give a shit. You know? And
that's why
there are no more group
they're
stage
changing
games.
it.
Yeah.
So should we get into some World Cup stuff?
Sure.
I feel like this is.
Do you want to just briefly talk
about Drogba? Do you want to talk about Drogba?
All right, fast forward 2 months. Is Jim Curtin still the head coach of the Philadelphia Union?
I hope so.
So do I. I mean, but we all do just because he's a really nice guy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a yes or no question, though.
I think he will be, because I think this last game was a reality check that the Union needed to understand that what they are doing lineup-wise is not working. And I think they will go ahead and maybe
sign a goalkeeper.
Yes. I don't know if that was a joke, but they have one on trial or linked to them apparently. But I think they will give Roland Alberg an opportunity. I think he's a guy they need to have in the lineup to provide some creativity out of the number 10 role. I think they will finally move Alejandro Bedoya either to a box-to-box mid position or put him out wide, because he clearly isn't working as the playmaker underneath a striker. And I think with a couple of tweaks to the lineup, this is a team with the talent to be successful in the Eastern Conference. We saw that for 2/3 of last season, but
fucking yes or no question, man. So yes.
Yes.
Okay. Seth, yes or no?
I think yes to.
It's hard to get fired in MLS. Is the
Because
other thing.
I was going to say,
it's hard to get fired.
The RSL firing aside, it's MLS and it takes a really long time. I feel like the Union would have to be in or near last place by
the All-Star break,
mid-season.
Yeah.
But yeah, obligatory comment about how if this were some European league, Curtin would already be fired.
As what, like the equipment manager or something like that? Anyways,
all right.
That was mean for no reason. Yeah, let's move on to World Cup stuff.
So yeah, a lot to unpack here. I think the headline to me, aside from the obvious that the U.S., Canada, and Mexico are bidding together, we had speculated about this a little bit leading up to the announcement about how the games were going to be divvied up. And I thought that, the U.S. was going to get more games. And my guess was the U.S. would get half, and then the other half would be split up 25-25 between Mexico and Canada. So I have to say, 60 out of 80 games in the U.S. and 10 games each for Mexico and Canada. That was pretty surprising to me, as well as all games from the quarterfinals on are in the United States. That just seemed like a big proportion for the U.S. Were you guys surprised by that?
Yeah, especially given the I'm blanking on the Mexican Federation president's name.
De Maria.
His comments of, look, 10 was what was on the table. It was 10.
Right.
You know, like clearly not incredibly pleased with any of this, you know, but
It's interesting because the format is something I don't think we've ever seen before. All of the joint bids from any sort of FIFA tournament have been proportioned more evenly. Like Japan and South Korea was 50-50, and the European championships that have been split up have been 50-50. So to have this tournament that is not really a joint bid, it's one country's hosting and two other countries are getting a tiny slice of the pie, is strange, but it makes sense from the negotiating standpoint because the U.S. would have been an overwhelming favorite to get this World Cup on their own. And they could have easily just said, all right, we'll do this without you and we'll win. And I think the only reason we're seeing the joint bid at all is because there's probably some sort of paranoia over what happened with Qatar 2022 happening again and wanting to cover all your bases. And then also what we talked about a little before the show, that the political climate in the country maybe made things a little trickier.
Yeah, I think that had Hillary Clinton won the election, there is
it's something I hear so often
there's
every day. People start sentences with that a lot.
abolish the Electoral College.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, had Hillary won, I think there's a better than 50-50 chance that this would have been a U.S.-only bid or a U.S.-Canada bid together. I think that all of the Trump rhetoric, it is a little bit scary from a FIFA standpoint to award a tournament to a country that is actively trying to keep out citizens of countries that can qualify for the World Cup.
Yeah, on the other hand, I mean, they gave a tournament to Russia, and they have incredibly...
Qatar with gay rights.
Okay,
yeah,
so...
Qatar, where the stadiums are being built by basically slaves.
Okay,
I mean,
so here's the difference. And those are legitimate concerns, but...
Oh, God, don't have a Sean Spicer moment right now. Think about what you're saying carefully.
No,
here's the difference between the
no,
Qatar slavery thing and the U.S. bid. Is that
I think it's just a simple fact that the U.S. is trying to enact a policy that would not allow potentially countries that qualified from the World Cup to enter their country. I mean, that is just a fundamental problem for the World Cup. And you know,
I just don't know that they. I mean, this is like 10 years from now, 9 years from now, whatever it is. I mean, like, how could that even be?
Yeah, Trump literally cannot be president at that point.
Trump can't be president at that point.
There's already signs that those sort of policies sort of fall apart before they even get off the ground. You know, like
right. And I think that the fact that courts have struck the travel ban down probably was a point in the favor of this bid, but you can't get past the fact that this is an administration that's actively trying to keep people from these countries out of the United States.
Trying to keep us safe, man. Trying to keep us safe.
I think it would have been about the optics. Just if the U.S. had been bidding against Mexico, or even a U.S.-Canada bid against Mexico, then I'm sure there would have been some member nations that would have voted against the U.S. bid as a statement against the political situation in the country.
Yeah.
And by including Mexico, you now turn the tables.
Right.
And then also Trump won't be in office, but depending on what President Kushner is doing, well,
Mike Pence or whatever.
Well,
First
Trump,
female president of the United States, Ivanka Trump, everybody.
yeah. Well, Trump will be in office barring impeachment or barring him just getting bored and quitting when the bid is officially awarded.
Yeah, and they're talking about fast-tracking that, I guess. Asking for a fast-tracked vote on that.
which would make sense because Europe is ineligible Asia is ineligible.
Africa just sort of had it.
Yeah, and Africa, apparently no one's really expressed an interest. And with a 48-team tournament, there already are logistical concerns of hosting a World Cup in Africa. And when you make it the first one, this expanded format.
So I guess they're expecting all 3 hosts to get automatic berths.
Yeah.
So they'll get like 3 of the available 35 CONCACAF slots at that point.
I
think it'd be interesting to. I will say the expanded number of CONCACAF slots is going to make for some really interesting sort of games late in the. At that point, it won't be the Hex, but between like teams you've never even, the Martinique Antigua thriller is what I'm talking about.
Can you imagine if they allow CONCACAF to have 6 bids on top of 3 automatic ones?
That's not going to happen.
They couldn't.
I would like
9 CONCACAF teams.
Yeah, that would be incredible.
Yeah,
but that seems unlikely. But also, I can imagine some random CONCACAF teams being pissed that Canada gets an automatic berth because they're hosting 12% of a
This
World
is
Cup.
obviously a total ruse to finally get Canada in the World Cup.
This is why I think that Canada and Mexico, in my opinion, can't really have any complaints with the way the games are divvied up. For Canada, they could, in theory, have bid for this tournament on their own. With 48 teams, it would have been less likely. But basically, Canada, by accepting 10 games, has gone from maybe like a 5% chance to hosting to like a 99% chance to hosting. And more importantly, they're going to qualify for a World Cup, which they most likely would have never done on their own. And then Mexico, I don't even know if they were bidding on their own, but they also have hosted the World Cup twice. They're going to be the first nation, regardless of how many games they host, to host 3 World Cups. So the way the games are divvied up,
I'm just looking forward to that Barbados-Spain group stage opener. See how that goes.
God.
Anyways, moving on.
So what about
something?
What about the turf issue? Because this is it was pretty hilarious. I'm glad someone asked it at the press conference. Of course, in 2015. FIFA basically forced the Women's World Cup to be played on turf in Canada.
Including taking multiple fields where there were grass venues and ripping out the grass to replace it with turf.
Yeah. And somebody asked at the press conference if they anticipated any games being played on turf in 2026, and to which the answer was, of course, no, it will probably be on grass.
Yes. Although, to be fair, and I get why Canada gets pinpointed in this discussion, because what happened with that Women's World Cup still was absurd, but the U.S. will be dealing with this as much or more than Canada. I mean, they're going to have games presumably in Seattle and Dallas and MetLife. All venues that play on turf.
Yeah, but all you have to do is look at, for example, the Silverdome in '94. There are ways to construct a grass field over turf to where it's perfect. It's just not something that any of the people putting on these international friendlies in the summer in the U.S.
in the Gold Cup.
Yeah, they want to spend money. They just roll sod out. I mean, they're modular solutions that'll work, and it's the fucking World Cup. So
yeah, and with 9 years,
you're not going to see Messi planting his foot and like scrunching up a row of. It's not going to happen at the World Cup.
Yeah, I can't imagine that'll be an issue, but still, it's funny that Canada's going to have to deal with these questions for the next 9 years, probably.
FIFA brought this on themselves. Not sure, what else to say about that. So, anyways,
where do you think the World Cup final should be? Knowing it will be in the
New
US.
York. I mean, I think it's been in LA. I think LA historically is a venue for major finals in the US. But I think it's got to be in New York. I don't know. Your thoughts? I'm sorry, I meant to say Phoenix. That minor league baseball stadium out there.
I was gonna say, do you think Drogba will try to draw the World Cup final to his market?
Or so I would say New York, or I think another venue that'll probably be considered is whatever AT&T Stadium, whatever
Dallas,
just the massive, huge,
Well, I guess it's interesting geographically because if it's a tournament that's being hosted by the 3 countries, if you do LA or Dallas, it's sort of like a co-US Mexico hosting. And if you do New York, it's a little more US Canada. I mean, I don't know if those are some of the things that are even really going to be considered.
All
I
right,
mean,
4 words. Dick's Sporting Goods Park.
Well, or you could hold it at the only stadium in the nation's capital. The World Cup final is traditionally held in the capital city of the host nation. So
20
Audi Field.
I was gonna say, I don't think RFK is gonna be available. You know.
Snyder Dome 2026.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
God help us all.
Theoretical
Jesus Christ.
stadiums. Are the finals usually played in the capital?
Not always, but the last several have been. Rio,
Brasilia.
Johannesburg.
Brasilia is the capital of Brazil.
It is? Okay, so
Boom.
that shoots down my...
Boom.
All right, Mr. Jeopardy.
Jeopardy knowledge dropped on you.
I always just
Wow.
assumed Rio was the capital.
I didn't know Brasilia was it. Really?
One of these times we're going to release a podcast of us just watching Jeopardy.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, before I was thinking Paris, 98, Berlin, 2006, Tokyo, 2002.
Where was South Africa? Was it Johannesburg?
Yeah.
Is that the capital?
Is that the capital?
I don't know, Seth. Is it? Yeah, I'd say New York, LA, or Arlington, Texas, whatever you want to say. You know, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I guess I should say New Jersey, Los
Yes.
Angeles, or Arlington, Texas.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Yeah, that would be it.
Chicago, Soldier Field. I mean, that would be strongly.
I don't think that stadium is big enough.
Yeah, that would actually it would be one of the smaller stadiums to
What is
get.
it? 50, 60,000, something like that.
Yeah, it's looking at Canada. I was actually thinking about this.
Olympic Stadium.
Well, they can't have the final, obviously, but just
Yeah.
in general, their venues. BC Place is a slam dunk, and then BMO Field is. I mean, presumably that'll be one of the venues.
They
It
could have
only
had like a
seats.
quarterfinal game there, or a round of 16 game there, or whatever. You know,
Yeah. Like Montreal though. Like, are they gonna play in a Olympic Stadium that's another 9 years older? Or are they gonna have to omit
God.
Montreal from this?
I love if I have there's a database online of abandoned stadiums or like disused stadiums, and it says there are baseball stadiums that are empty, and it's it's like it just says Olympic Stadium and just says vacant. Like it's not even used for anything anymore or something.
I'll say when I was covering the Women's World Cup, being at Olympic Stadium suddenly made me feel right at home. Felt just like RFK.
South
Thomas?
Africa has 3 capitals.
What? You can't
What?
do that.
And
Is
none of-
Johannesburg one of them?
None of them are Johannesburg.
But
I don't understand. Pretoria is the executive capital. Bloemfontein is the judicial capital. Cape Town is the legislative capital.
interesting.
Oh, they should have just put all those things in one bomb-friendly city like the U.S. did, where our government could just be wiped out, I guess, Anyways.
I don't know. I'm gonna continue to.
Sorry to
push
get all
for-
Wandrel the favor on you guys, but,
Yeah, will there even be a North America by then? Better safe
yeah,
than sorry.
like what stadiums won't be destroyed by 2026?
I was
Like,
like people keep floating out Miami, but that could be underwater by then. Like,
There's a pretty good chance.
and they still won't have an MLS team. I think we just end this podcast.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. We will chat with you soon.